Good morning, everyone. It's such a honor and great pleasure to be able to celebrate my mom's 100-year birthday with so many people who loved her and who have been following her work, who have carried her work on for the world to be able to enjoy. All of this is such a blessing for JIN SHIN JYUTSU, for my mother, for all of us, to have people like you who, your water bottle. We found the water bottle. I knew we were looking for this water bottle. Look at that, miracles happen. But it's just so nice to have you all here, and it's really special for me to look into your faces and to see how JIN SHIN JYUTSU has lived in all of you. It's just a great honor, and I'd like to welcome you to a day of celebration for Mary Burmeister and for JIN SHIN JYUTSU. Thank you so much. And yeah.
Piggybacking on what David just said about looking into your faces, start with a story right away from Mary. In 2002 at the organizers meeting, some of you may have been there, David would always bring Mary in, so everyone could have their time with her and have, pictures taken. And when I was sitting next to her, kind of I was at the end of the line, kind of sitting with her, and she was just kind of looking around, and I said, Mary, we really miss your classes. And she said, I know. How modest she was. And Mary, she was so humble, but she wasn't modest. And then I said, but we've really come along, we've really learned a lot, in the last few years. And she goes, I know, I can see your faces. And it just, just what you were saying, so, yeah. Yeah, it was like, Mother Courage, looking over her. We were all here because of Mary, And just something I said on the first day of our organizers meeting, I'd like to repeat, because one time in class, I as many people, all you remember, we'd all, during a break, you first, rush up to Mary to say something or share something, or, and I had found a poem that I thought she might like, and I showed it to her, and she was reading it, and then it just clicked something in her, and she goes, yeah, I know. Sometimes I wonder why I teach even. But people seem to enjoy it, so I guess I'll keep doing it. And that's why we're here. It's just Mary's generosity. Not that she felt that she needed to do this or she was going to change the world, People seem to enjoy it, so I guess I'll keep doing it. And I just love that, So that's, I hear that voice all the time, we all hear Mary's voice a lot, right? So
there I am. I wanted to do this at this time, partly because I like to entertain if I get a chance. But the real reason is faces were mentioned, and I'm reminded of Mary saying, and it has to do with the fingers. She says sometimes, and maybe it's also written someplace, at some point we will know JIN SHIN JYUTSU well enough that all that you will need to do is the fingers. And I had an experience with Mary years ago, and with a group of, it was lunchtime, and a group of 7 or 8 new students came and were gathered at the back, and I stood back and I watched. She worked with their fingers, and I had the pleasure of watching faces become absolutely beautiful. They were stressed. It was the first day of class, stressed, pulled tight, and they all relaxed. and just from holding the fingers. Now, I know now that she was doing the fingers that were involved with face flow. I didn't know that at that time, so I just assumed she was holding all the fingers, so that helped me move to holding my fingers, kind of thing. But that was the story that I always remember of Mary, that the fingers were the simplest, and she proved that by virtue of how people changed right in front of me. So that's the important thing about Mary. Simplicity was the focus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carolyn, for those of you that don't know me, from Houston, Texas. Just wanted to let you know I started with the sessions under Blythe's grandmother in Venice, California in 71 or 72. And at that time, practitioners taught self-help, so she always sent me home with self-help exercises. So I don't think there was even a self-help class at that time. So that was how Mary was getting the art out. And so I've been doing self-help since 1972, which is amazing. I took my first class in 1980 with Mary in Boulder with Wayne as the organizer. And it was 30 or 40 people. It wasn't a huge class, but it was a big class. And yes, we all lined up, and yes, she listened to our pulses. But I was sitting in the front second row on that side, and occasionally Mary would come in front a little bit of her table. I didn't understand anything, and it was way over my head, but I observed and watched her, and she always was touching herself. And she would have her hands on herself, behind her back, on her side, holding her arm. And that was the one thing I took away from that class. That I really got was to always have my hands purposefully somewhere.
My first experience with Mary was when she was already in a wheelchair, and I had come up to just have sessions. And I had heard that sometimes they brought her in on Wednesday. And so I was hoping that would be the case. But, you know, I knew also that might not happen. And so on Wednesday morning, I was having my session, and the door opens, and David pushes Mary into the room. And I was just in awe. And, you know, she didn't say anything. She didn't talk. And she put her hand on my left wrist, all 4 fingers, and then her other hand down on my ankle. And she just looked at me and smiled. And she just gently rubbed. I had a cyst on my wrist that I had drained twice, and it came back. I didn't say anything about having that. And when she finished the session, the cyst was gone and it never came back. Debbie remembers, Debbie was in there, and she just looked at me and smiled. Well, I expected that. Be the smile, they said. You said. I'd just like to say one thing. I had polio when I was 3.5. I can't begin to tell you what JIN SHIN JYUTSU has done for me and for my clientele base. The things that I have seen are absolutely unforgettable and unimaginable. And I am 72 years old. I take an all-natural thyroid, and that's all. And I work 42, 43, sometimes more appointments a week. So I think I'm a little like her on that, except that I don't work on the weekends. And she did. So it was something that I'd searched for a long time, having studied all kinds of modalities all over the world. and what it's done for my clientele base and my friends is just amazing. Never ceases to amaze me what she brought to so many people. So, thank you, Mary. And what an incredible blessing. And, you know, from my bottom of my heart, we need more like you. Thank you.
This is really awesome, isn't it, you guys? This is really incredible. I'm feeling the presence of not only Mary, but Philomena, certainly I'm thinking of. Some of the other instructors who aren't here. Lynn. Wonderful, wonderful family we've got. And it's just a blessing to be a part of this incredible journey that Mary initiated for us. I met Mary in November the 14th of 1977. I was in the middle of my Saturn return. And I want you to know Saturn returns can be a really wonderful thing. And I walk into a door, and there sat Mary. We had 11 people. Phyllis Singer was in that class with me, actually. And had 11 people, 3 of us were new.
Where was it?
It was in Scottsdale. It was on the old 67th place office.
Right, the old office.
The old office. The one that Mary fed the birds out front in the bird little tray. Yeah. And it was a wonderful event. As many of you know, I went to a class looking for a path, a way in life. I'd left dental school, I'd left the education system, and I was really wandering. I like that expression, not all who wander are lost, but it was my journey, and I quickly in that week I realized it was going to be a long journey, and it continues to be a blessed, beautiful journey. I want to tell you why I chose to study. You know, many of you know that in my upbringing I was raised with a really fundamental kind of Christian biblical story about right and wrong and rules, and I left the organized church and joined the New Age community, right? And then I realized the New Age community had just as many rules as the church had. No sugar, no tobacco, no alcohol, no.
Not too much fun.
Yeah, fun was definitely not on the list, Jill. Yeah, that's right. Because somebody was watching. Yeah. And in that class, someone asked a question. It was toward the end of text 2, although in that day, you guys, text 1 was text 2. We started, the first flow I ever gave to anyone was a lung flow. And in fact, that was a pleasant memory. I was in the midst of absolute overwhelm, not knowing at all what I'm doing with my hands on somebody's body. His name was Bob, he was from Minnesota. Big guy, and here I am doing a lung flow. And I had my hands on his 14s and his 22s, and all of a sudden his lungs, his chest just dropped. And all of that lung swelling that she talks about with the lung function disharmony, all of that lung swelling dropped. Well, my mouth dropped, right? And I looked around, and did anybody else see what's going on? Did you get? And Mary was standing leaning against the door jamb. She looked at me, she smiled, and she walked away. That was Mary, you know, just seeing the process. So that was the beginning for me. And then toward the end of that class, I'd raised my hand so many times it wasn't frozen shoulder, but it was definitely a shoulder project. And I would raise my hand and I'd say, Mary, I don't understand. And she'd say, it's okay. It's okay, wait. Well, I called home halfway through the class and said, if she says it's okay one more time, I'm going to hit her. It is not okay. I raised my hand another time and I said, Mary, I don't understand. And she said, I know. She had a great sense of humor. I hope you folks in the video and from some of our stories, I hope you've seen and will see the humor in Mary. She was so funny and so personable. It was like someone else mentioned in the story, you'd run up to Mary after class and you'd want to tell her, "Thank you, Mary, you were talking just to me," you know? She'd already gone. Mary had packed her bags and she wanted to get back to her office or her time alone.
The last mentoring class I present here in Scottsdale, it was an amazing experience with Mary. In the moment, you know, we have to give sessions, and Mary came to work with the students. And you know, every session you could see in Mary's face how she enjoyed that moment. So she's, you know, usually Judd brings Mary in the wheelchair, and she is approaching to the table, and Mary's hands was there. But one day, it was, I think, the last session, Jody brought Mary, and Mary stayed quiet for a while, and then she used just one hand to hold the hand of the students on the table. And the other hand was, and I could see the face of the students. She was so frustrated Mary was not touching her. And in one moment, Jody appears, and the student, "Mary's not touching me." And so I remember Jody, "Mary, come on," and hold her hands. And Mary remove her hand and keep holding this way for the entire session. Finally, at the end of the session, Jody took Mary, and I was finishing my flow, and when I finished, the student sit on the table and, "I can't believe I have a back pain for years, and this is the first time it's gone." And for me, it was a great lesson, because we saw Mary this morning mention, simplify, simplify, simplify. There's nothing more simple than just hold the hand. And it was just enough. So for me, it's amazing, this simple experience. And it's motivated me to my journey in search of more simplicity. Thank you, Mary.
I was blessed to meet Mary in 1973, and I met her through a friend. So, and she, well, I won't go way back in that story. So we kept asking her so many questions. She finally said, we have to have a class. So she invited my friend and I to her home to stay in the house and have a class in her home. There were 4 of us. And I'm sitting listening to this little Japanese lady who was 4 feet 10, and she did not like me to say that because she always wore heels, and she would say to me, "Muriel, I'm 5 feet." I finally learned not to say too much. So I didn't understand a word she was saying, but but part of it was to have a JIN SHIN JYUTSU session. And when she gave me a session, I knew that my body had been looking for that and everything. And you may not know it, but I'm very shy. But I managed to ask her for a second session, and she gave it to me, and I never left since then. The second class, we had 12 people. What a disappointment. But there's a story that stands out with Mary. She was very feisty. We were in New York, and it was a large class. New York always had a large class. And one of the students started to have an appendicitis attack. And Mary was in the bathroom, and they ran and they said, "Oh, you've got to call an ambulance, Mary, because, you know, the student is not feeling well." And Mary said to me, she said, "There I was teaching this wonderful, quiet art of love, and they want me to call an ambulance with all these sirens." So she went to the student, and she went in.
Like Mary could do.
Like only Mary could do, and you could hear the pop, and the student was fine. interesting because she could be so feisty and so loving. And somebody mentioned it early in the morning that when you were with her, she was so present. And you know, she taught us so much just by her own personality. When you were on the table, she was so present, nothing existed except Mary and you. And then, you know, she'd leave and everything, and then you'd see her in the hall, and it's like, oh, you don't exist. You know, because her focus was different. But she taught so much. You know, I go in for my sessions and I think, oh, I've got to tell her all my woes, you know, I got to get rid of this. And she'd look at me and said, oh, I'm going to just do a fourth depth. How disappointing I didn't get to give her my woes, but I felt better afterwards. Mary was always teaching, but you didn't know she was teaching. She had a way of touching your soul, you know, and even lessons now that I may not have picked up when I was younger. I feel them so vividly because she just has a way of opening everybody to their own soul. And that's why she almost changed the name of JIN SHIN JYUTSU to Now Know Myself. To her, this was the very, very important thing. And self-help was very, very important to her because that took you from the outside world to the inside world. And you may have to think about it. Who do you avoid the most? You avoid yourself the most, is what she would tell me. You've got to look inside. That's where it all is. And that's the beauty of JIN SHIN JYUTSU. We have it here. We have other people's hands. And it just, the lessons just go on. Any lesson she gave you, she would. Don't you think so, David? She was always teaching?
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, she was always the teacher.
But she never made it sound that way. You know, she just always seemed to key into where you were and knew what to say for you just to hear it. And the thing is, I think when she used to say, look until you see and listen until you hear, is what she was trying to tell me. That just be patient and you'll see more deeply all the time and you will hear at a deeper level. So the art of JIN SHIN JYUTSU, Now Know Myself, is a wonderful, wonderful gift. And she will always be with us teaching us. Because once you hear her words, they never leave your soul.
There's so many stories, and I'm inspired based on what you said to share this one. You know, as a student, you want to do your best, and you want to know everything, you want to know everything, and you want to know it instantly, and you want to be able to retain it. Oh, that's another whole story, right? So I had the opportunity to see a client, a young man who was very ill. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I have my chart that I had drawn, copying what Mary did in the relationships. And she would draw these ovals and how they connected and lines that would go. And you would want everybody else's drawings because the other students were always better than yours. And I put it down on the table, you know, on the floor, and I was being Mary. I had the person on the floor, and on my knees. Not so easy, but Mary did it, so I should be able to do it too. And I listened to the pulse. I had no idea what I heard. And I just started to work. And this was a young man who was 27 who was practically catatonic, right? And he got up after the session, and he said to his mother, I think I could take the car and go swimming. And his mother's mouth was wide open. She hadn't heard him talk, and she had to lift him out of bed, and this was like a miracle that happened. So, you know that Jed is my brother, and I called him up and I shared with him what had happened, and he said to me, what flows did you use? No memory of what I used. Not at all. So I now feel the worst student in the entire world. I didn't learn anything of Mary's lessons because I don't remember what I utilized in that session. So I had the opportunity in class to go up to Mary and I tell her the story, and I'm like ready to be into tears, and I'm confessing I'm a horrible student. And when I said, I don't remember one flow that I used, and her response was, good. And that's all she said. And she said, I hope you continue to give him sessions. And I realized then it was all the lessons rolled into one. It was about being in this now, right? About seeing everyone in this moment, and not to carry from the past to the present. And it keeps resonating in my mind, all of those wonderful, tiny little lessons that built exactly what you're saying into bigger and bigger and bigger stories to help me. And so the gratitude just keeps continuing with each breath that I take. And then I exhale. Thank you, Mary.
My journey to JIN SHIN JYUTSU started with my very first session by a practitioner in New York City. And I woke up from that after years of massage and acupuncture and all different kinds of treatments, always searching for health. And I woke up, opened one eye and said, what was that? Then I got encouraged by that practitioner to attend my first JIN SHIN JYUTSU class in New York City. And I was warned to bring food and water. And I thought, where am I going to this journey? New York has delis on every corner, but bring food and water to this class because your brain is going to work. I found that out later. Your brain worked so much with new ideas that you just go like this. You just kept eating. The whole class was eating. It's changed a little bit, doesn't happen. It took me about 5 years before I could stop eating because the brain needs food, right?
What's the secret?
What's the secret?
How do you stop eating?
In class.
I know. That's what I mean.
I don't know, because now it's more easy to digest. I don't need to eat all the time. But it was an amazing experience, I think, the second day. And I went with no expectations, just as a part of moving forward on the path. And I think the second day I was a little bit late because I had 2 kids, and I walk in and people are all lying on the tables, there's low tables, all in different sort of states of ecstasy or whatever it was, but real deep harmony and relaxation, and people were working on them, and Mary was at tables giving talks, working on people, and it was magnetic. It wasn't anything specific that happened, but it was just an ambience that you were in this state of harmony and balance and care, and you didn't have to do anything. It was happening, it was present. And from the classes that I took with her, that's what I always came home with, this sense of we're all in this together, we're all harmonizing, we don't need any perfection, expectation, it's just here now, and made great connections with people in sharing that space. And that is what she brought in, just like a direct connection. And I'm grateful to her for that, because JIN SHIN JYUTSU makes a universal sense that you can study anything and you can apply it to the principles of JIN SHIN JYUTSU. You can make sense of anything after 34 years of studying. If I just bring it back to the principles, and I call it the essence of life, actually. So you bring it back, and JIN SHIN JYUTSU ties it all together into oneness. And I'm grateful because that was what I looked for in my life. I've been looking for it. I'm still looking for it, or I'm still in the process of understanding it. And the awareness and the knowledge that she put into it, and that we all put into it, because it's expanding human consciousness. And I think that's what we're all here for. And JIN SHIN JYUTSU is just this incredible gift, which is really the gift of life and being human, and being able to see, listen, hear, taste, touch, and love. That's why we're in the body. So So I'm grateful that I am able to experience this joy from this knowledge and awareness that she shared. Thank you.
I think it was about my third year in JIN SHIN JYUTSU, and I was having pretty extreme sinus issues, and I had the courage to go up in this 110-person class to Mary. And, you know, I told her, Mary, I've been having sinus issues. I've been having sinus issues my whole life. You know, what should I do? And she said, oh, hold your ring finger like this. For a year. So I did. I was just a bit disappointed because I was hoping she'd give me a few flows, right? But this was it. And I did. I was very diligent. And the sinus completely went away, but I got 14 warts on my right hand. Wow. So the next year, I go up, and you know, I'm sure she does not remember any of this because people were at her all the time asking for self-help. She had hundreds of students in her classes, so I went up and I said, Mary, you know, last year you told me to hold my ring finger like this for my sinuses, and I did, and the sinus issue is gone, but I have these 14 warts. She took my hand, she looked carefully at them, and she said, oh, hold your ring finger like this. For a year. Second year, so then I was really disappointed because I wanted something different. The warts go away in the order they came. It was fascinating. And by the third year, I just had eczema between my fingers.
You hold your ring finger for a year, right?
So I went up next class, said, wow, you know, the sinus issue is gone, it stayed gone. The warts left in the order they came, and now I just have this eczema here. Huh, hold your ring finger for a year. And I did, and that was it. And it took me many years really to understand this was all the unwinding of second depth. Yeah. And that definitely was my issue. And it was fascinating to see how it was working, you know, from deep to surface. I don't think it's what happens to us as much as how we go through it. And I think for me that's the greatest gift of JIN SHIN JYUTSU.
And so I had the exact same feeling being a 28-year-old with my very cool torn jeans. You know, when I saw this woman come out, I thought, oh my gosh, I am in the wrong place. But when she started speaking, I didn't necessarily believe anything. Which actually, you know, skepticism is fourth depth. And some of that was fear. And skepticism, fourth depth is balance. So I'd heard a lot of untrue things, as we all have. And so I was going to find out, which is my path. And in that first class, I had a very clear goal, which was that my daughter was critically ill, and I was looking for help for my daughter. So, and I was totally willing for it to come from anywhere, be anything. I thought I wasn't stuck to any particular philosophy. Nevertheless, when I left that class, it was like my world had crashed, because even though I found that this woman really knew something, I also found that everything that I thought I didn't believe in, but I actually did believe in, had just fallen apart. And So I actually left devastated and with amazing tools. So the first thing that Mary did for me was she would not let me try to fix my daughter. In other words, she was going to participate in that attitude less than zero. So I was a very shy person. I couldn't speak in front of 3 people without my voice cracking. Yet in this class of over 100 people, I couldn't help, my arm would shoot up, you know? And I'd say, Mary, my daughter has hearsay. And so then I'd listen for how other people were asking questions, because people asked a lot of questions, you know, and she answered them. She gave them suggestions, and I'd try it that way. Mary, doctors have told my daughter that there's a hearsay. Wow. You know, Mary, my daughter's genetic thing is critical, hearsay. You know, it was like, and I was completely like, oh. I started to believe she doesn't like me. Because she answered everybody else, even if somebody said, my husband has a heart condition. She'd say, you know, 10 flow, 15 flow. Or she would not interact with me in this way. And yet, you know, I was desperate enough that I didn't get up and leave. I was a little insulted. And a little hurt and very insecure. On the 5th day, someone brought my daughter for Mary to listen to the pulse of. And Jill had been giving Lucy sessions, and I had taught me simple self-help techniques to use, which I'd been using every day, because it helped her feel better. It didn't affect the condition. She was in critical care very frequently. And so the main project was respiratory. So what did we just hear in the video? Right? She listened to Mary, and we had been using 10 flow, breathing flow, 13 flow, second, you know, etc. She listened to Lucy's pulse and she said 4th depth. And this is where I started to get it, like, and over and over again with everything people have been sharing today, there's a whole bunch of other worlds. Mary was in the present with who's here now. And that's never the diagnosis. That's never the label. That's not what it looks like. It's who is, what is. When Lucy would get off the table and I get on the table, she would get in Mary's shoes, which had these heels, but her feet fit in the flat part. And she'd clop around, and I think she'd go out and clop around the office, you know, and so that visit, Mary gave her 3 pairs of shoes, which she took home and decided were flamenco dancers' shoes. So the background of this is, before JIN SHIN JYUTSU, that she could never have danced. She couldn't breathe enough. And for years, anytime she wanted to flamenco dance, she put on Mary's shoes and her, you know, shawls and scarves, and she put on the cassette recorder, and she, I think Karen may have given her a lesson.
It's amazing hearing the stories that everybody has. Mary's a great soul. And that's what it comes down to for me. Listening to the stories and meeting her, you know, we all have our ideas and our attitudes, our thoughts, but when you feel a great soul, they touch you wherever you are. But the interesting thing, I know that she's a great soul, but she would say very clearly, I'm not perfect. As one of the classes, someone was asked her a question, and it happened to be at a time when Mary's sister was in the class too. It was here in Scottsdale. And someone asked her, you know, Mary, JIN SHIN JYUTSU is such a great art and can do all these things, how come you wear glasses? It was a little different she thought a minute, she said, you know, I'm not perfect, or I wouldn't be here. If I was perfect, I'd leave. My perception, right, she would never utter that. She would never tell you that because she didn't want herself to look beyond just this, what we could all be. She didn't say, I've been here thousands and thousands of incarnations and I'm way up here and I'm going to help you lift it. She just said, we're all the same. And that's what I really love about this humility, because it gave me the possibility, I too can know myself to be what I love in her.
What, to continue what everybody else said, it's the authenticity of her. It's like you don't just feel like she's seeing you, but she's also who she is. And when I was, going for treatments, I have been with, many meditation teachers and gurus, and so I had my projections. And she was very different because she wasn't always smiley. When she wasn't smiley, and then, after every treatment, she was thanking God for being with her. And I remember one day, me being all excited that she's coming in, and I think it was the third session or so, and I said to her, I was already lying, good morning, Mary, how are you? I'm awake. And then on the other side, she was so sweet. Always, she was checking out, she was checking out the legs and, telling me about beautiful fabric I had on my pants, while at the same time she was just like Jiro Morai, checking out your calves and checking out the back of the legs.
But she also liked your pants.
And also she likes the pants, of course. For me, this is me. I loved her authenticity. I loved her that you would meet somebody that is real. And so you could relax because she's real. There was a possibility to meet. And I remember, because in those days I had to come later on. I was coming from Germany all the way over and get treatments. And so I thought, well, I might as well ask for self-help. So I said at the end, Mary, would you mind giving me some self-help, knowing that she usually doesn't, but I gave it a try anyhow. Don't work. Don't work. It got me, really. My German attitude, like, give it to me, I'm gonna work it out. It was really good, yeah, so, thank you.
And one day I decided to come here in this country, and it was in '84. So I was waiting and I went to the office. It was not easy to find, but I found the office. And David, you welcomed me. I was on the bed waiting Patricia. And if I remember, because at this time I didn't speak English, I don't remember what you said, but I said yes. I think you just married or something like that, or I don't remember. And I think you told me that I am sorry, but it will be with Patricia, something like that. So I received a session with Patricia, and it was wonderful, wonderful. And after, I was waiting on the bed because I was very shy. I didn't know what to do, I have to move or stay. And you come back and you say, do you want a session with Mary? I said, yes. So Mary came. Yeah, and I didn't want to, because I was very shy, I didn't speak English. I don't remember what had happened, so she listened my pulses and she did a session, and she didn't say nothing, and I didn't want to talk. I was so pleased just after the session with Pat. And I remember that she started on the right part and turned like that, and she went to my shoulders, to my 11. Oh my God. I had the impression that her hands were inside of my body. And it was not painful, it was more than painful. But it was, and I was so shocked that I didn't want to say, well, you know. And she didn't talk. She didn't talk to me. She didn't say nothing. But at this time, like a mantra, she said, "Why using your brain? Why using your brain?" Yeah. At this time, I said, it was so painful that I promised her I never use my brain again.
So I would have sessions pretty often with Mary, and I was always fascinated that she could listen to your wrist and then go hold 2 places on your body and you would see God. It was like, how does she know? That never hurt before. And she would listen, and then she'd hold 2 places. And it never hit me as hard as one time after a car accident I was in, I would get this big head swelling. And she listened to the pulses, and she held the coccyx in my opposite 16. And it felt like somebody went in with a vacuum and sucked the fluid out. It was unreal. It was one of those moments where I'm like, how can that be? She only held 2 places. And it made me really fascinated about the pulses. And you know, most of the time she would listen, and one time I went and she would listen and she said, "Lucky me, lucky you." So, but she didn't say anything about what I needed. She just said, "Lucky me, lucky you." And then I got really determined that I was going to convince Mary. I was going to convince her that she could tell me what she was hearing and tell me why she went to those areas. And so I talked, you know, I'm telling her, "Mary, today you can tell me what you really hear. I want to know." And I laid down and she listened. Hard worker. I was like, "No, tell me what," you know, and she wouldn't say a word.
But she did.
But she did, yeah. And so the next time I'm telling her all the stories and I'm looking and I'm fishing and I'm like, "Mary, today you can tell me what it is you hear." And she listened. She got very quiet and she goes, with a big twinkle in her eye, she goes, "I know all your secrets." And at one point I kind of gave up. It was my week of sessions, and I go and I lie down the next time. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to talk her into it anymore. I was letting go. And at the end of the session, she listened. She said, "I will remember your body to God."
One of the things that we have talked a lot about this weekend is diversity in our classrooms, and I hope you see that the outreach is really supporting that mission, and that the people who are applying are sharing the art with their friends, families, loved ones, and clients, and that we do have a diverse group of people who are coming to our classes, all ages, ethnicities, walks of life, and the outreach really does support that mission. And if you feel so inclined to give a gift, we have a special donation campaign for Mary's 100th birthday, and I would like to raise $10,000 on behalf of Mary, and I would like to have 100 donors give us $100. And for this special donation campaign, anyone who would like to make this contribution, I have created these little notebooks with the kanji that say Mary Burmeister JIN SHIN JYUTSU Outreach, and they have a little pin, and this will be our gift to you for anyone who wants to make a contribution to this campaign. So. Thank you. Thank you. Woo! Jody is my dear friend and very special to me, and I feel like even though I didn't get to meet her Aunt Mary, that I get to know her through her teaching and through her family, which I feel so privileged to know through our generous community. And Jody just gave me a check for $1,000, so I have a lot of dancing to do.
Your help is changing people's lives. The outreach was founded in 2001 to expand the work of Mary Burmeister in the art of JIN SHIN JYUTSU physiophilosophy. Contributions support medical research, educational development, implementation of grants that base selection on merit, need, or minority status, a selection of individuals to receive treatments, financial support for JIN SHIN JYUTSU associations, as well as seminars, correspondence courses, and outreach programs in developing countries. In 2011, the Foundation partnered with United Charitable to reach its goals. So far, we have raised over $90,000 in charitable contributions to the MBJSJO. This year, we honor and celebrate Mary's 100th birthday, and we thank you for helping us make her dream a reality. Get to know a few stories from people that were supported by your compassionate sharing. Thank you.
Welcome, my name is Bridget Allen, and I first want to start off by saying a big happy birthday to Mary and for everybody that continues to do this beautiful work doing JIN SHIN JYUTSU. And I feel so blessed that I got the opportunity in 2013 through outreach to further my studies of JIN SHIN JYUTSU. I came upon a beautiful woman named Zena from South Africa and had my first session in 2013, and ever since then there was no looking back. I didn't have any funds at that time. I'm a single mom raising 2 kids completely on my own, and outreach provided me that opportunity to really dive into JIN SHIN JYUTSU, to learn what it's about. And now my kids are 9 and 7, and every night before they go to sleep, they ask me to do JIN SHIN JYUTSU. My son, the other day, I asked him what he likes about it, and he told me that he can feel his heart. And it's just changed the dynamic of my family, and I feel really lucky and blessed to be part of this community. And I hope that in the future, I can help teach JIN SHIN JYUTSU to other people, and also be of some inspiration for other people that want to go along this path. Again, I could not have done this without outreach, and I just appreciate being part of this beautiful family, and I hope to meet you all in the future, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, and thank you.
If you would like to make a credit card donation online to the Mary Burmeister JIN SHIN JYUTSU outreach, please visit www.jsjinc.net and select the menu option for outreach and make a donation. If you wish to make a donation using a check, please make the check out to MBJSJO and send it to care of Kelly Mount, MBJSJO, P.O. Box 410, Simpsonville, Kentucky 40067. All donations are fully tax deductible in the United States.
I wasn't sure what kind of a day this was going to be, because it was a little bit free form, and we were, hoping people would have good stories to share about Mary, but this really kind of blew me away. It was an amazing day of getting to experience my mom through all of you and through your experiences with her, and it's been more than touching and beautiful experience for me and my brother and Martha and the family. So thank you all for honoring us with these wonderful stories.